I mean, when cameras were invented,
Okay.
a lot of painters were scared that cameras would take their jobs, and guess what they did? There's way fewer painters in the world today. Um,
Hmm.
when when telephones became more advanced, there were people whose jobs were telephone operators. You call an operator and then they connect your call. That entire thing was replaced by AI. Elevators used to literally have people standing there to push buttons for your floor. That was replaced by AI, and so jobs will go. But this is nothing. Jobs always go. Programmers who are scared of losing their jobs, yes, that's a real fear. But guess what? In the future, whatever they're replaced with, those people are also going to lose their jobs in a few years. And so, like, that's just what happens.
Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode on Talks with Ido Evergreen. And in this particular episode, we're just going to be talking about AI in front-end development. And the best person to talk about this is definitely going to be Tejas because himself, right, is a front-end developer before now. He has a lot of content about front-end development, books out there about front-end development, and he has contributed to pretty much I think the React ecosystem a whole lot as a front end developer, right? So um this discussion is just gonna be around AI, artificial intelligence, how front end developers could get started, what they need to know, what other concerns do they need to undo before going into um AI as a front end developer. And hi Tejas.
Hi, Ido. How are you?
Yeah, I'm amazing, I'm good. Um So let's just quickly jump right into the conversation, right? So just give us a quick introduction of yourself and what you've been up to.
Yeah, I'm Tejas Kumar. As you mentioned, I think you did a great job of the intro. I've been building on the web for many years in various places. Today, I do mostly AI engineering, but front end is still something that's very close to my heart.
Amazing. Um, so let's just jump right into the conversation for front end development. So far, right, like you said, you still do front end like once in a while, and you still get to build out front end applications. So, what do you think excites you the most about the changes coming to the front end so far?
Yeah, there's really no changes on the front end alone side, right? Like React is still React, Vue is still people just they exist. I mean, the changes are more specific to the libraries and frameworks. So like React has a compiler, that's cool, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's more if you're talking about changes in front end, it's more really the way in which we work that changes. There's a lot of code now that is written by machines. We don't have to do as much because language models can just generate code for us, and then that's extended using mechanisms like model context protocol and things like this. But in terms of front end itself, the changes are not really that significant. So it's more, I think, the way we work that is a significant change.
Huh. Okay. Amazing. So speaking about AI right now, right? AI on the front end. So what basically excites you when it comes to AI and front end integrations together?
Yeah, I think it's the reason I do all the things I do really is for the benefit of people. I don't really care much about code, AI. Like all of this is secondary, but the human element is the most important to me. And in keeping with that, what excites me the most is it just becomes more accessible to everybody. I have a friend, Max. He did a talk at my meetup that I organize. I organize a local AI meetup here, and Max has never written a line of front end code ever in his life, ever.
Hmm.
And he learned about vibe coding from my meetup, and he decided to give it a try. Max's wife owns a flower shop, like an actual physical store, and an Instagram shop, and and through vibe coding, he built her an entire end-to-end CRM system. Uh, which
Wow.
front it's and the UI, the user interface of this thing looks like Trello. It has drag and drop. Everything works perfectly.
Amazing.
All his he's Russian. He doesn't condone the war. He's not that kind of Russian, but he he spoke with an LLM exclusively in Russian, and they built this together. So it's quite remarkable that he didn't speak the dominant language, which is English, and he has never written a line of front end code in his life. Built a full software solution, deployed to Vercel. The database element and authentication comes from Supabase, and he built something out of nothing with AI, and I think that's really what excites me the most. Is we become more expendable, um, But another way
Hmm.
of saying that is a lot more people have a lot more opportunities, and I think that's very great.
Amazing. That's really really amazing, and I think that's just one of the most important thing about AI these days, right? People that haven't written any line of code could just pick up any LLMs and build out like amazing products. So speaking about you as a developer, right? As a professional, if you had to create your own should I say your own AI tool for front end, right? What would you do?
My own AI tool for front end. Do you mean like for front end development to make it easier somehow,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
that's a good question. I don't know. I think there's many great tools that exist that I use. Tools like Cursor. I love Cursor. I think Cursor is probably the greatest tool in the world right now for coders, for
Okay.
front end developers. Yeah, I don't actually have an answer to that. I don't think I would build any. I don't think developer tools are worth building because developers are a very small market, and I've done what's called developer
Yeah.
relations for a long time now, and it's 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 like Sisyphus. It's a task that's like pushing a boulder up a very steep hill, and I think if I was to build something, it would be mass market. It would be for everybody. It would be for your mother. It wouldn't be for developer.
Yeah.
I think that's really the better business model because there's way more people on Earth than developers on Earth, and I think
Mm-hmm.
if you cast a wide net, you just catch more fish. And so,
Okay, okay, amazing. That's a different perspective, and it makes a lot of sense. Targeting the population, right, instead of just developers. Amazing.
yeah,
Okay, so
if you think of things that developers love, that some of them even brand them as tools for developers. I don't think they're tools for developers. Things like cal.com. Cal.com has a great reputation among developers because it's open source and open core. And
correct.
that's great, but it's not for developers. It's for dentists who want to book appointments with their patients. It's for like it's for fishermen
Mm-hmm.
to book dates with fish, no, to book dates with people who come buy stuff from them. It's like for everybody. Similarly, Vercel. People say Vercel. It has a great reputation with developers. The small amount that have heard of Vercel, um, but it's not for it's for people like your mom or Kendrick Lamar, somebody to like put a website on the internet, or maybe you could say it's for their developers
Mm-hmm.
to put a website on the internet. Either way, it's made for everyone. I think that's really what sells. I think if you're trying to, because developers, I'm a developer. I would rather, in fact, I love Browserbase. I'm friends with Paul, the founder of a company called Browserbase. Um, but I hit the limits of their free tier, and then I just decided to build my own because that's what developers do. And I think it's a much harder sell. Yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
think I
Mm-hmm.
would go after something more broad market.
Okay, amazing. So some developers are actually still worried, right, that AI could actually take their job. And right now, basically, asking this question from a front end developer's standing point, because, like you said, there are a lot of tools out there. We have Cursor, we have V0 from the Vercel team, we have Lovable. Like we have a lot of tools out there front end developers get to use, and there's this worry about okay, these tools are definitely going to take our job one day because they build good UIs. Because I've gotten to use them like to write actual code, in as much as the code could be bad, right? It could be maybe the wrong approach or the wrong performance. Like if you think about performance, but they work to some extent. So, what will you basically tell developers that have that fear that AI could replace their job?
AI probably could replace their job. I think there's no question about that. I mean, when cameras were invented,
Okay.
a lot of painters were scared that cameras would take their jobs, and guess what they did? There's way fewer painters in the world today. Um,
Hmm.
when when telephones became more advanced, there were people whose jobs were telephone operators. You call an operator and then they connect your call. That entire thing was replaced by AI. Elevators used to literally have people standing there to push buttons for your floor. That was replaced by AI. And so jobs will go, but this is nothing. Jobs always go. Programmers who are scared of losing their jobs, yes, that's a real fear. But guess what? In the future, whatever they're replaced with, those people are also going to lose their jobs in a few years. And so, like, that's just what happens. And I think if your question is what should I say to developers who are afraid of that, I think it's just be smart. Look, open your eyes and see the truth, and get ahead of it. Learn where it's going. Watch the wave as it crashes, and follow it. And that's, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I could be replaced by AI. You know, I could be AI on this call right now. This could like not even be me. This could be some deep fake. I guess we'll never know. And so,
Correct.
um, I think, you know, what am I doing? I'm just watching where I think it's gonna go, and following it, but not out of like some self-preservation mentality, not like, oh, I'm gonna be obsoleted. More in the sense of just following my curiosity. I'm really interested in where AI is going, and I think that's really the key, is to in a sense not care, in a sense almost pretend like you've lost your job already and you have nothing, and you have nothing to
Mm-hmm.
lose, to know at the core of your belief system that, hey, I'm going to be fine, but I need to follow my interest, because there's a good chance your interest is the world's interest. Everyone's interested in AI, but that's because you're interested in AI. You know what I mean? Like, th-
Yeah.
like we form a single unit of a collective whole, and if the collective whole is interested in something, then you should probably be too, and follow it deeply. You know what? And so I think that's the best way to get ahead of AI taking your job, is to be interested in AI and learn the new weapons in your arsenal that you can wield. So Kent C. Dodds has a lot more practical things to say about this. He was on my podcast recently, and he said things like websites are going away. Websites are going to be replaced with what are called MCP, Model Context Protocol servers, and this is his practical advice to people who are scared of being obsoleted by AI, is to learn how to build MCP servers and clients, and that'll
Hmm.
buy you a few years. And he's right. But what happens then? You know, I think there's a deeper issue and a scarcity mindset that we need to solve. And when we solve that, um, we'll never be afraid of being replaced by anything. We'll know that we're just uniquely valuable, and will be until we die.
Amazing. So speaking about, I think I got to see the episode with Ken C. Dot. I think he mentioned that the browser too might go away at a particular point, right? I don't know. The future is kind of it's really, I won't say it's scary, but it's for me personally, it's looking very, very interesting, because like you said, there are new tools coming out, there are new things to learn to like keep up with your skill, and I think you shouldn't worry too much about the job. um so speaking about resources for front-end developers or developers that want to get into AI, because I think you mentioned I think some episode or some podcast, you mentioned that we are the edge, right? Like at the beginning edge of AI, right? We are the forefront of AI, the whole AI market and everything. So most people, most developers, most engineers are not really interested in AI currently, right? Because they are like, okay, maybe it's just a buzz, it comes and go. We saw Web3 came and go and stuff like that. So for people that are interested, I want to pick up, start learning about AI, start learning about RAG or MCP and stuff like that. What resources do you recommend for those engineers?
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this today, because if you asked me this like a month ago, I would have no answer for you. It's interesting, because it's so nascent, it's so new. The landscape of content is not ideal, and what does that mean? Well, I mean, think of a spectrum, and on the
Hmm.
one end, you've got just absolute nonsense. You've got a bunch of like thread boys talking about like, you have to get this or you're going to miss getting that bag, you know, like you're going to miss out if you don't read the new announcement. It's this fear driven, it's this thing that capitalizes on people's fear, which I think is frankly nonsense. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got really great content, like so my friend Sean Wang Swix has a podcast called Latent Space. It's awesome, it's really great content. um, the problem is you have to be like really deep in AI to get it. It's super deep, and it's about the latest papers and the latest mixture of experts architecture. It's like there's a lot of terms in there that if you're trying to get into AI are not going to be helpful to you. And so where what is the resource? And I think I searched long and hard, and honestly, I didn't find enough. Uh, and so I created a podcast episode.
Okay.
It's somewhere around, it's an hour and a half or something, an hour 45 maybe, and it's about everything you need to know to get into AI in 2025. Um, that is the best
Hmm.
resource that I and obviously, like, I'll say my thing is the best, but honestly, like, I'm careful to search and search and search, and I have not found a single resource that is as clear and as educational about getting into AI in 2025 as that. It just doesn't exist. I would like to see it exist. I would love to see everyone. I'd love to see James Q Quick make some. I would love to see you, Ito, make some. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of resources, that podcast episode should be enough to get the ball rolling. And once you listen to that podcast episode, I believe that will unlock a lot more things. Then you could probably go listen to Latent Space after, and a lot more things will click. It's a starting point and a bridge. And I think from that episode, you will discover more resources organically.
Hmm. Okay, amazing. Yeah, I think I've gotten to I actually got to watch that episode too of the one you're talking about for concerning the whole getting started with AI. I think you actually did a very good job in that episode because you broke down the hard aspects because like you said, AI is full of it includes a lot of jargons, right? Like a lot of abbreviations that you need to understand before you could even get started. And yeah, I think that's a very, very amazing resource. Like you said, yeah, um I think there's also a shift for like most educators, right? They mostly trying to make AI content these days. I think for example can see, and then we have the TypeScript guru, what's his name again? Like they are actually making out um educational content for AI developers because that's really, really, really important because we don't have a whole lot of content out there for AI. Amazing. Speaking about common mistakes developers should avoid when working with AI, in top of my head right now, I could just talk about prompting because I think prompting should be something every developer should learn, and it's not just taking the LLM and serving some text to it, but you should know how to prompt. But let's just hear from the expert, right? So, what are the common mistakes you feel developers should avoid when working with AI for the first time?
Yeah, good question. You mentioned learning how to prompt. I think that's such an
Yeah.
interesting statement because prompting is just talking. You just prompted me. You literally just gave me a prompt, right? You said, "Hey, what's the mistakes to avoid?" That's I don't think we need to learn how to prompt because we've been doing it our entire lives. I, I think
Hmm.
in terms of mistakes, I think the biggest mistake that we make with AI is we give it authority. This is insane. It's such a
Hmm.
ridiculous psychological phenomenon that we just don't talk about enough. But like we assign authority to these things. We literally, like as human beings, our condition is we read something from ChatGPT and we're like, oh, this is probably true. In fact, this is definitely true because it's a machine told me, so it must be true. It's to the point where there's a there's disclaimers. Yeah, ChatGPT can be inaccurate. Always verify outputs. This is like literally at the bottom of the web page, and there's all kinds of disclaimers with AI about how this is probably inaccurate. Um, and if you look at the way these models are trained, the papers like "Attention is All You Need," for example, which is the paper that is the foundation for GPT 2, 3, and all the models from OpenAI, many of them anyway. Um, a lot of this is taking statistical data that's likely to be true and adding some randomness or non-linearity to it, and this randomness can introduce things that are inaccurate. So like if you're some machine learning researcher and you know how this works, then of course you're not going to trust it. But it's I find this phenomenon so interesting that for the vast majority of human beings, we're just looking for something to trust. Isn't that interesting? Like we're just we send a message to ChatGPT, we prompt an AI, then we're like, okay, no, I can trust this because that's our nature. We're like sheep, in a way. And so I think
Yeah.
the number one mistake is giving a language model or an AI application authority in general. Not even I wouldn't even say too much authority, just authority. This must be authoritative. We do this also with the media, which has been just known to lie to us. And so I think mistake number one is believing what you get, and I think this goes a long way because if we take this mistake into the domain of vibe coding, which vibe coding, for those who aren't familiar, is using an AI assistant to code to build applications. And some people go about vibe coding in a very interesting way where they just send a prompt and the machine generates like a lot of code that they don't even bother reading. Yeah, okay, it's probably they assign authority. It's really good, and they keep going until they have an application like Lovable, like V0, whatever you said. They have an application and it works, but they can't read the code. And when it comes time to add a feature, remove a bug, or something like this, you go like, "Oh, how do I do it?" Okay, I'm just going to lean more on the AI. And what you're doing is you're increasing your dependency on a system that is unpredictable, and on a system that is often wrong. And this
Yeah.
is the big mistake: is how we need to
Mm,
manage our dependency on this machine wisely. And I think probably the biggest mistake, I'll finish the answer with this: the biggest mistake is we are irresponsible with how we manage how much we depend on
mm,
AI at this current stage.
mm. Okay, amazing, amazing. Yeah. So thinking about generative AI, right? And basically, we've seen how it's changed how we build interfaces in the last year, and by the introduction of different tools, we've gotten to see. Maybe I mentioned quite a few number of them, right? So now there are a lot of speculations, right? Where we say, okay, the interface might go, the browser might go. We might have to, might not really have to build for um, the browsers anymore, right? But where do you see generative AI going in the next 2 to 3 years? That if we ever have to still create interfaces at that point.
I think, where do I see generative AI going in the next 2 to 3 years? Honestly, I agree with everything Kent C. Dodd says. I think we don't. I have no problem visualize. We can do this exercise together. Visualize with me. You wake up in the morning and you open your phone, which is the UI is just a big assistant. It's a text field,
Hmm.
or even better, it's just voice. You don't even need to open anything. Just like listening all the time, and you're like you literally just into the ether. You open your mouth, you say good morning, and the voice is like, good morning. Here's some things that you should pay attention to,
Hmm.
from the news, from your email. You have a podcast episode coming up with Tejas to record. That's at 5 local time, and you just like you have this just like, oh cool, wow, awesome, thanks. And again, you just get up, you go brush your teeth, and you hear or see, hey, the weather is good today, your health was good, your sleep was healthy last night, and so maybe a 45-minute run this morning would be really good for your health, so you go do that. You come back, and you're like, again, you're just like in your house, like you're just saying things like, hey, what should I eat for lunch? um, and you just get like, here, you should have this, and would you like it? And you say yes, and it's just like it's cooked for you. You know what I mean? Like that, I think is very very possible with generative AI. In fact, I know for a fact there's people working on this as I speak, and really the next Steve Jobs, the next Apple, the next billionaire, the next legacy is the person or company or team that builds that. I think OpenAI is probably in a good place because they have the voice feature already. The
Yeah.
problem is compute and latency. It's not where it should. Perplexity actually just launched a really awesome voice assistant feature where it can now almost take actions on your behalf. That's the problem. Everything is almost right now, because you open
Hmm.
Perplexity Voice and immediately you're met with a screen that says connecting for like 3 seconds. And then after it connects, you're like, hey, book me an Uber to go home. It will ask you, where is home? You say the address, and then it just opens the Uber app. I didn't ask you to
Hmm.
open the Uber app. I asked you to book me. And so it's not there yet, but it's
Yeah.
close enough that we can do these visualization exercises and actually believe it. So that's where I think AI is going to lead. And I'm excited. I'm also building towards this, and I think that's the future I want to see for sure.
Hmm. Amazing. So I think during the episode you guys called it Jarvis. I think this Iron Man kind of style where you basically control your whole system with just your voice. The Jarvis style. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really
Well, no,
amazing.
no, it's not just controlling the system with your voice.
Okay.
It's almost like it helps you control your life. You don't control the
Hmm.
system. The system controls you in a way,
Okay.
or helps you be in control. Yeah, because even without my voice, I'm talking about Jarvis from Iron Man is a proactive assistant. It's not a reactive assistant. It will
Yeah.
tell you, hey, and we kind of have that today. Like before this session, I got a notification on my calendar app. Hey, you have this thing with Edo. We have it. It's just the form factor is still a vibration on a phone. That can change.
Hmm. Amazing. Okay, amazing. Speaking about the skills and speaking about the skills front end developers, right? should focus on to stay relevant, right? So we're just gonna touch some skills that you think front end developers and let me just say software engineers should focus on to stay relevant in an AI driven industry, right? So what are some skills you feel like they should know, like um they should know to stay relevant?
Yeah, good question. You're talking specifically about front end engineers or software? Ido, are you talking about front end engineers or software engineers?
Your software as a whole, software developers, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really being wise to. I mentioned already being wise to manage our dependency on machines, but also I think using AI to solve problems. For example, there's if we consider building software, building an application that reads your, let's say, your heart rate, and then gives you like insight about your fitness level. If you did this before 2022, you would write an algorithm to compute like a fitness score, and you would iterate over a bunch of heartbeat
Mm-hmm.
data, and you would actually write like a loop and go through it and filter and sort and so on. Um, Now, with generative AI, you don't need to write that algorithm, or you may not need to write that algorithm because you could just take all the data, the heart rate data, and send the raw data, the unstructured data, to a language model and say, hey, crunch the numbers and give me a fitness score. And it will do that with some reliability. And so I think the skill that software engineers would really benefit from is learning when to offload a ton of algorithm work to a language model versus
Mm-hmm.
when to write the algorithm themselves. Because it saves you an enormous amount of time, right? Like it's one thing to just send a prompt to an AI assistant, and it's another thing to like think through an algorithm and like write the code and then rate it for complexity and then make it future proof and test it and so on.
Okay, okay, amazing. Um Amazing. So I think for this particular conversation, right, we've touched different stuff pertaining to AI and how developers could kind of get started and stuff like that. So we might just touch some advanced stuff, and these are just my own personal questions I just want to ask you about AI. And so mostly speaking about MCP, right, Modex and Context Protocol, right? So how does this differ from a regular RAG, right? Like your augmented generation retrieval augmented generation, right? So how does it differs when it comes to implementation and also in the term? Yeah.
Yeah, RAG and model context protocol are two different things. RAG is nothing more than retrieving some correct context and then putting that
Mm-hmm.
context in your prompt and then sending it to an LLM. So a classic example of RAG is if I ask a language model, ChatGPT.com itself performs RAG. If you search for the weather in London today, it will perform RAG. It will go get weather data from like weather.com, and it will inject that into its own prompt. It's like, hey, here's some weather data. Now the user is asking, what's the weather? And then the language model underneath generates based on the prompt. So in many
Yeah.
ways for RAG, you get the answer from somewhere, you put the answer in the prompt, and then you put the user's question, and the LLM does the rest. That's RAG. Um, RAG can be done agentically. So RAG can be done by giving like a browser tool to an agent, and the AI agent, will then just use the browser tool to browse the web whenever it needs to go retrieve some data to augment its generation to perform RAG. That's RAG. MCP, or Model Context Protocol, is an entirely different thing. It's a protocol, so it's a way of communicating between a client and a server. And you can think of a great example of an MCP server is Slack. So Slack is the popular chatting application, and they expose an
Yeah.
API. They expose an API, so you can use the Slack app to talk to your colleagues over Slack, or you could build your own client. You could build your own chat application that consumes Slack's API. Um, if Slack changes something in their API, it would be a real shame if you had to change your code every time. And that's why Model
Mm-hmm.
Context Protocol exists. Model Context Protocol can wrap an API. And so if Slack, for example, created an MCP server, then any MCP client like Claude Desktop or Cursor or ChatGPT at some point can just use Slack's. So you could literally use Slack's MCP server, connect it to an MCP client like Claude, and you could say, hey, what important messages from Slack should I pay attention to? And you just send that as your prompt, and then it will automatically know, okay, I'm going to go to Slack, I'm going to get the messages, I'm going to read them, and then tell you what's important. And so MCP is this really great thing that extends the capabilities of any MCP client, again, like Claude Desktop or ChatGPT or similar.
Okay, amazing. I think that's quite clear, and thank you for that. Yeah, so I think we've come to the end of this episode. So just one final word. I don't know if you have just one final word for developers out there, getting to work with AI, or they are just starting out as engineers and they are kind of skeptical about the whole AI race and the whole AI edge. Um, so just one final word for developers out there.
Yeah, I'm also skeptical about the whole AI race and the whole AI world, and I think it helps us to be skeptical about everything. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, we can't be delusional about things. AI is
Yeah.
very, very, very popular. It is displacing jobs, and it's, at least as far as we can see, it's here to stay. And so your skepticism is a beautiful thing because it can save you or it can kill you. You know, like for
Yeah.
example, if you look at a bush and someone tells you that this bush is not safe, meaning you're skeptical about the bush, then you don't go in the bush. And this can save you
Mm-hmm.
if there's a lion in that bush. However, the skepticism can kill you if that bush gives you safety, but you don't enter to hide from another predator. You know what I mean? So, like, skepticism is this beautiful double edged sword. I think if you're skeptical about AI, that's fine. But if that skepticism leads you to inaction, where you're not growing as a developer and you're not even investing a single amount of thought or time to upskill, then you may miss out when your job is redundant. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think I like your word skepticism. I think my word to developers is, hey, let's maybe balance skepticism with realism and cynicism with hope, and ultimately
Hmm.
arrive together at a nice middle where we're ready for any future and we have guaranteed security in all circumstances.
Hmm. Amazing. Amazing. That's a very, very amazing advice to developers out there. Yeah. So thank you, Tejas, for coming to do this, and I really appreciate from your busy schedule. And I think that should be the end of this episode. Thank you guys for watching to this point. See you in the
Hey,
next
thanks again,
one.
Ido. Thank you. Take care. Goodbye.
Yeah.